Hey guys, Ben Wheeler here, as always, doing my best to do my best. It's the usual today, just me, just enjoying the time. People don't quite understand enjoying the time every time, you see. And it gives me an opportunity to think about the things that I've been uh, doing and the choices I've made, as well as with Tears of Elfland, which I'll put in the description in a minute. Not the description, the chat. Hmm. Honestly, I enjoyed Tears of Elfland quite a bit. It's it's different from the stuff I usually read, and even when it isn't, when it's playing to the crowds, it's hitting its notes quite well. I think all the characters really just kind of did fantastically. Uh, sort of knocked it out of the park. And as strange as that might sound, it's kind of important to me for these sort of things to happen. There's the link in the chat for you guys. Uh, things I think I did quite well. Uh, let's see. I think I did the characters quite well, the song and dance numbers, especially the goblin dance numbers. Those just sort of went out of the park, hitting it up. Son of Adam came to town. It's fantastic, as well as the cover art, the plot and description, I think. A lot of people they go for that super complex plot when in actuality all it is a space marine going in and doing business, and he's doing business to other people, and there's plenty of murders and stuff like that, but it's just not quite the same as some of the stuff they put out there. Not quite the same at all. You see, I'm not really into making the next great Space Marine story. I'm into writing stuff that's interesting, unique if possible, but always interesting. If it's not interesting, I don't really see the point of writing it. Never have. People might be saying, oh, money. But money dies with you, doesn't it? And beyond a certain point, it's just buying you more luxury. Money should never be an argument to doing anything, because then once you lose the money, it disrupts your mental ability, your mental concentration. All of a sudden, your success isn't determined by how well you actually do, but rather that dollar sign that comes in. And let's be real, you don't know how that dollar sign comes in or whether it will be uh, valuable in the same way as it was last week or even the day before. Hasn't anyone do teal next? Uh, hasn't anyone ever watched how the Bitcoin goes up and down, fortunes won and lost in a single hour? Up to 20,000, the next day down to 20,000. Money is never a reason to do anything. But Tears of Elfland sells well. I should rather say it's an easy sell. I don't really have the following that John Del Raz and other people have to really sort of break out into that stuff. But that suits me just fine. I got my eye on the longer term. I fear that, well, I won't talk about it here, but there's a life cycle to things of about 2 years. Third sip of the day. Life cycle to things of about 2 to 3 years. If they're making quality content, I think we can extend it to 3 years. If you're making edgy content, two. So it's got a sort of cycle to it. You start off and you're whatever you decide you want to be, but then outside factors come into your life and you decide that you're going to be different than what you are. And because you're different than from what you are, you lose track of the sweet. I should be. Oh no, I am recording this. You lose track of what the sweet middle ground is for your content, between being too weak and too mainstream, and being, oh, how do I want to put this? Too harsh, too you. You in the bad way, though. A lot of people are just you in the bad way, and it's not pleasant. It's just sort of, it becomes, things like um, people crashing and burning, things getting lost, just sort of a whole nasty situation. Um, Ken, the Ginger audiobooker, loves Tears of Elfland. Thank you, Ken. But but he's still reading his way through it. He's a busy man, though. I can't wait for more of our audiobooks to go out. Thank you for whoever's listening. I know this is kind of a more relaxed stream, but this is, when I'm alone, this is kind of the content I want to make. Sort of just you and me, and we're sitting in a chair together in front of a fire, perhaps, and we're just talking about whatever comes to mind. If you want me to talk about anything else, of course, you can always put a different choice in chat. I'll always be happy to talk about anything you want. Um, you know, that's how it is, I guess. Let's see. Oh, I forgot to do. There we go. Anyway, Tears of Elfland was a success. I sold out in Dragon Con. I had a pretty good pitch line. Tears of Elfland is a book about kids going into the woods to solve their psychological issues. One time somebody asked me, "What psychological issues are those?" And I go, "Why, the best kind." Dead mother. It broke them. They started laughing, and I can't remember whether they bought a book anymore. I probably should have written that down since my memory's so garbage. But it was very successful. It was very funny, and people used it to talk about things. Honestly, having that one sentence pitch memorized is probably the best thing any author can do for themselves, because now they know how to describe a book. They know how things will go, and how to properly anchor their any conversation about their book. Um, by the way, that art is from Vin E, an artist who I appreciate. You can find her on Facebook and other places, assuming it's a her. Having that one sentence pitch can open things up. If it's funny, that's even better. Or if it's awesome, that's even better. How would you describe something like Empire of Silence? Dune-esque pretty boy gets knocked down to the lowest dregs of society and must now fight his way up to the top of the intergalactic empire. Or is it something like Conan the Barbarian? Local barbarian too angry to die. That sort of thing. It's honestly quite enjoyable uh, to sort of work your way around things. And I see I'm being joined by more people. Yeah, you can always join in, guys. Have any conversations. Um, our Discord, I'm sure. If you want to just come in and chat, I'll be there for you. Just be respectful. Things like, I see you too are men of culture. Ah, yes, he is a man of culture. Though he hasn't quite joined me yet, some things have come up for him. So I'm just going forward with it just to enjoy the night and have a conversation, do more than myself. Been doing things like learning how to format. Most of it's been terrible, and I've had to restart a couple different times, but hey, that's all right. Uh, I'm looking forward to David's Halquist books. What's funny is I'll talk more about other people's books than I'll ever talk about my books, and that's good because I'm not a narcissist. But it doesn't quite help the sales like it should. Honestly, I just don't have that streak for it like other people do. Honestly, it doesn't appeal to me. Seeing the things that John Delarosa and other people do for advertisement is fantastic. They sell many books, but I prefer Brian Niemeyer's approach. And honestly, I'd rather be a platform for content than someone screaming into the void forever. Especially when it's like, what do you sell? Shovelware. Oh, some Space Marines got lost. Oh. And it's like that's a cool concept in the end, but like I start reading it and it's always the same characters, always the same tropes. And it's like you've read one and then you read all the other ones and they're all the same thing, except they're not as good as the first one. I think David Weber was a large entry into the Honor Harrington knockoff genre, having being the man who created it, of course. And so ever since then, it's like, just don't care. Elizabeth Moon series, all that jazz. I'm sure they're fantastic. I didn't enjoy what I read of Elizabeth Moon, but I'm sure, they were in the library, so I'm sure they sell. Uh, but I'm just blasé. I'm even blasé about the Galaxy's Edge books that have come out of other authors who aren't Nick Cole and Jason Ansbach. They're good, fantastic romps, full of action. I'm not knocking the series, but they just don't have that spark that the first couple had. Like you can divide them kind of in half. Like you got like Legionnaire through Attack of the Shadows, and then Sword of the Legion to Retribution. That's a good way to put it. Divide them up. The Honor series gets tiresome after a point. Wooly Ram probably has the right of it. Uh, Anthony says that he can't wait to join, but he's still doing a few things, I guess. Not that he actually said that. I'm just assuming. The and I'm not like. Here's the thing. I really get scared that people are like, oh, you just jealous. You just jealous. No, if I was jealous, I'd just go out and make it for what I want. In general, if I get jealous of something, I take it. Not their version, of course, but their whatever copy of it is. I've got figurines, I've got books that I've liked in other people's things, and I just sort of pursued it for myself. Got the job, made the money, purchased it for myself, and now I have the thing as well. I wanted to be an author, so I wrote, and Jason Rennie, sci-fi, gave me a chance, and it worked out. And I'm, putting back into it. And knowing where you're coming from and where you're going is important. Knowing who you are is important. Get that art of war feel. You don't want to lose track of what you are, what you like, and honestly, what you want to read. I want to read. I want to read gothic science fiction. I want to read a Nick Cole science fiction novel. But we got those. Soda Pop Soldier, Pop Cult Warlord, all those names. And of course, I'm as long as it keeps connecting, I'm fine. The internet got weird. I'm sorry. It would when I want to stream. But that's alright. Suits me fine to sort of work on this stuff. Builds patience and character. But Gods and Legionnaires is absolutely fantastic book so far. Honestly, perhaps one. Here's that little pyramid I was playing with. Honestly, one of the best Galaxy's Edge books so far. It's really, truly enjoyable. Um, he has this beatnik style. Like Nick Cole is a man whose style I could recognize from the first paragraph easily. Brian Niemeyer, not so much, sadly. John De LaRose, no. Larry Correa, no. But Nick Cole, oh, he's got a style. You miss like it's hard to really know what you're getting into when you go into a true style, and it's it's something about like leaving the author leaving fingerprints all over the place. Like he presses on something, do 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 do, and you see Nick Cole shaped fingerprints all over the place. And like you get to see sort of what he gets up to and what he likes and what makes him tick. He likes video games. He likes this and that. He likes women and he likes living well, and all that other stuff here. And it's very recognizable. Um, he has a certain truth to him. Not that everyone has their own truth or anything ridiculous like that. Um, but rather that, ooh, how do I want to put it? Uh, he makes it look very good, and that's very important. It's not enough that a writer really just produces something solid. Like that'll do. But it's like something I talked to Jaji about. I want authors' versions of things, not cookie press, mass produced schlock. It's why I really enjoy working with Amos Bellomy and um, David Halquist and Corey and all the other ones who generally congregate around Superversive Press. Someday Anthony will join me, by the way. I don't know when. Um, and it really does make me kind of appreciate them and appreciate the things that I can work through with them. uh Man, this internet stuff. Anyway, and it helps like that. A lot of the things I see from others, especially those who are within the establishment, just don't have the same style. Don't even have a style really. Like I don't really think anyone's ever talked to about the beat of N.K. Jemison's sentences like I could with Nick Cole. Like his stuff reads like a beatnik poem, and it's good. Like I don't want it all the time, but when I come across it, I love it because it's got a beat to it. He knows how to write, how to play with emotions. No wonder Gods and Legionnaires and the Savage War trilogy is coming out so long. He's putting so much into it. Um, and that's something to aspire to really. Like you'd be surprised. Like it's been a really rough week for me. Sick, audited, 1,000 different things sort of beating me down. But in the end, of course, I trust in the Lord and things will work out all right. But also, I read a good book. I read Gods and Legionnaires. And because I read a good book, my personality perked up. I felt better. I looked better. People commented that my spirits had picked up, which is a true statement. My spirits had picked up. And of course, because my spirits picked up, I found more energy for the day. I found my ability to handle things to be much higher, and it all worked well. Nothing like a good book. Anthony should be joining me in about 5. I am reading through Chalk. I haven't in a couple days, but I've been learning how to do. Uh, been learning how to do book formatting, which is a lot of fun. It's tedious though. I see why people charge a lot of money for it, but I think I'll charge less once I know how to do it, and it's a lot of fun. It was very enjoyable. Um, like just sort of making a book look like uh, like how you want it to, like how it could be the best it could. Copying styles down, that sort of thing. It's really quite enjoyable. Let's see here. While we're waiting, nice little bit of trad wave. Honestly, synthwave is probably the best aesthetic that I've ever got. Just because it's got a sort of softness to it. It's got a I wish I could write synthwave. It's got a beat to it, but it's not a beatnik beat where it's languid and sort of forceful. All this personality. It's sort of soft and in the background of actions. I would guess William Gibson sort of figured it out with Neuromancer, because there's always a kind of beat to Neuromancer, and a whole bunch of like little things to it that sort of pan out, like certain descriptions of what people are wearing, how things are going, how things are, um, hmm, how things are going to end up with the characters. Like there's a sort of color scheme to everything. It's blue and things go down rabbit holes and then they come out of rabbit holes. And then it's normal again for a bit. And then it's like it's down the rabbit hole again and you're and it's like and the world is very real. Like they're walking through a street, they're going to a restaurant, they have a relatively normal conversation, and then it goes back down into it. It's like bam, and then you get a weird and then you get that Rastafarian reggae scene, and then you get back into the synthwave. Except now it's more high-minded. While they're in the space station, it's more future pop. It's got a little bit of bite to it, a sort of a sort of sharp futurism to it. As it's not. I don't know if I call it futurism. I don't know what I call it. Like so when it comes down to sounds, you have a whole bunch of different sounds, both recognizable and not, that you can sort of pick apart at a glance. For example, here's Digibro's Cipher. Your friends ask the means to reach my ends big. So you recognize that as rap immediately. If you heard it, I hope you did. You should. But then, let's see, pull this back up. Let's get Anubis. So let's look for an Egyptian sound. So this is an Egyptian sound. I just made a couple seconds of that. An Egyptian sound. Like, so you recognize it as Egyptian because there's a certain twang to it, perhaps. And you can go on and on. Arabian, English, classical music, Christian hymns. You could probably tell the difference between Protestant and Catholic hymns and Orthodox hymns as well. Um, I just had a thought. It's like the Catholic and Orthodox hymns. The Orthodox hymns are like the same, except they add in the end, and we're not Catholic. Ha ha ha. Ah, I swear to goodness. I thought Amos was gonna join me today. Well, we'll continue on until an hour passes, just for my enjoyment. So we have certain sounds to it. Now, future, let's see here. No one's watching. I'll do what I want. Let's see here. So future, electro swing, bad electro swing. Let's see. Then there's something like this. And oh, now that's something else I've discovered with a whole bunch of different music styles, and the fact that electronic music has just blown up our ability to create more and more songs and more sounds. It advances the whole art system. Like, I don't know how to describe it. Let's see here. You got combinations of things like Upular, which are really just portions of the sounds of the movie Up strung together. There is Belgian Bulgogi's, uh, oh, what's it called? Let's see, it's sort of an electro lounge, and I'm gonna bring this around. I don't even know. Hold on a second, let's go home. And it should be there. Boogie Bell Geek. Memory. And it's got a sort of relaxation to it that isn't really normal. But then, let's take a look at Soviet techno opera, which is a genre, I swear. Not chum drum bell drum, a bedrum, which is that one guy you hear about sometimes. There is. Where is it? Space opera. I can't find it. But let's see here. Yeah, that actually has the sound of a lot of the stuff I've heard for this sort of thing. And there's a whole bunch. Ah, there it is. That's Techno Opera 2032 Overture and Prologue. I'll put that in chat for you guys later. And you see the sound difference, right? You heard it. You know that there's a fundamentally different sound from this, and then I'm gonna get future space techno, just normal stuff. Let's try space trance. There's a certain echo to it, a sort of how do I want to say this? Words don't fail me now. There's a certain sharpness and echo to it that implies that the room and ability and surroundings that it's in are much greater than you are, and that you're moving faster than you are, and that there are things beyond you that you're going for. Um, and it's not as heavy. Excuse me. It's not as heavy as the Soviet techno opera, which is excellent if you ever just listen to the whole thing, by the way. Um, even though you have no idea what they're saying most of the time. It's mostly about how great the Soviets are. Like, you're not missing much, guys. Uh, but the sounds, they're completely different, but they describe something similar of mankind rising to the stars and exploring them, of blasting around. What do you want, Anthony? Uh, in live stream chat. And of course, books are the same way, but this sort of genre fingerprint is something I pursue as well. There's a certain like steampunk is punk, but there's a certain non-punk about it. Everyone needs to be a little polite. Someone is rude if they are not polite, and that they have very specific sort of rules they have to follow, and if they don't follow, um, if you don't follow it, it's unusual. Because it's unusual, it can make or break a story. You see, diesel punk isn't as polite as steampunk, but it has a certain grittiness and roughness to it, and it has less of that burnist shine that, like English nobility, lends to steampunk. In fact, I would say that if you don't have some element of that Victorian sense to steampunk. It is not steampunk at all, but probably diesel punk. Clockwork Century is really diesel punk, in my opinion. Um, but diesel punk doesn't sell because people don't know what diesel punk is. Which is a pity, because diesel punk is definitely worth it. But, acquired tastes. Atomize anything enough and no one can find what they want. Um, or they could find exactly what they want, but they can't find much of it. Like that Belgian Boogie Belgique. Belgique? I don't know. It has a sound, and it, like the garden I posted for you earlier, uh, yeah, he is. Um, just scroll down in Superversive chats to live stream. Come on, man, you got this. Come on. You can have, I don't know. You can have a sort of fingerprint to it, but that doesn't mean it'll sell well. You see, how many people want diesel punk? Hello, Anthony. How are you doing?
Testing. Testing. Am
Yeah,
I
we
on?
can hear you, but you're also echoing.
Uh, talking to my phone. So sorry about that.
Okay. Just
Let me
turn on the echo. Go into settings.
setting
I'll be right with you guys. So I can.
echo cancellation.
Yep.
Is it any better?
Let's see. No.
Testing.
Do you have headphones?
I have headphones on right now.
Huh. How odd. Hmm.
Shockingly, my phone is not the best
Neither is mine.
quarter.
I'm just on the computer. Let's see. How do I want to do this? There should
Try
be.
turning off use speed. This make a difference?
Let's see. Yes. No more echo.
Oh, yeah, okay. Now I could hear you properly through my headphones before. Not. Okay, I got it. It's good.
Okay. How are you doing today, Anthony?
Okay, I am wonderful. Busy. But I figured I could always have time to procrastinate and talk about anime.
Oh, fantastic. Uh,
Or books or movies, whatever.
well, I was just sort of talking about the what was I doing? What was I talking about? I was talking about the fingerprints of genres and how they sound differently, and kind of quantify how they sound differently from one another, because they have to have a quantifiable difference in sound and sort of beat and everything else to it. Like, have you ever read a Nick Cole book?
Yes.
So
Yes, I have.
could you name the differences between his books and John C. Wright books?
Yes, definitely.
Go for it.
Nick Cole, John C. Wright loves using ornate language and very complex, over the top plots and, really out there concepts. Nick Cole feels a lot more grounded in both language and ideas, honestly. But on the flip side of that, he also is a lot more structured. I think he has better dialogue.
Yes, absolutely. Not that John C. Wright's dialogue is bad. It's just Nick Cole
I
has.
think John is excellent at writing heightened dialogue, which is why it reads very well in Awake in the Night,
Yep,
and Gil reads very well, but when he tries to write more realistic dialogue, it could feel a little bit forced sometimes.
it's probably a
It's
write what you
never
know
ruined the
situation.
story for me, though.
No. Though there is something interesting I noticed he didn't touch on. Nick Cole is obsessed with video games, and John C. Wright often brings up lawyering.
Interesting.
So Nick Cole recently released a book to the insiders of the Galaxy's Edge group, which is including myself, uh, where called Gods and Legionnaires, and it's basically about these savages, these colony light hugger types who go mad in between the stars in the Galaxy's Edge universe, and then they come out and start like killing and ravaging and destroying everything in sight, trying to turn it into their own. And it's like one of the groups gamified their society. So everyone is like playing their own video game. And sort of like the guy, like it's all in there. And of course, you have Soda Pop Soldier, Pop Cult Warlord, and Control Alt
Yeah.
Revolt, which all have the same themes. Then you have John C. Wright, former lawyer. The man has six books, his Count to a Trillion series, which is literally dedicated to lawyering on progressively larger intergalactic scales and time scales. Um, as well as in, even though it's not as obvious in Swan Knight's Son and the Golden Age series, there is lawyering going on in the background. Papers have to be in order, and certain, rights and rituals have to be maintained for contracts and uh, rights and privileges to be maintained as well. I forgot. It's like responsibilities. There we go. Between liege lords, that sort of thing. So it's
Well,
like not even the voice; it's the motifs they put into it. Go for it.
I'll say too, in John C. Wright's works, he often deals with fairy world, and in fairy world, the language that you agreements and contracts and promises is vitally important.
Yep,
And lawyering in and out of it is something that isn't just like, it's not so much a John C. Wright thing, it's a folkloric, honestly.
yep. In Tears of Elfland, one of the characters in the end just becomes a lawyer because of his dealings with the fairies, and because he's a lawyer, the fairies won't torment his family because he'll hit them with things that he knows how to hit them with. Uh, which I am amused by. Like even though it's just like an afterthought, it's one of those afterthoughts I kind of go back and go, like there's an
It is
actual
pretty
benefit.
funny.
Yeah, benefit to being a lawyer. Uh,
I mean, Nick Cole, first off, I remember Vox Day had a line like this on his blog, and I wholeheartedly agree that Nick Cole could have been a great writer, but decided to be a popular writer and faulty decision. Not that he is not a very good writer as of right now, he is, but
it's
his
fantastic.
Wasteland trilogy, yes. I agree with Vox because here is a difference. His Wasteland trilogy is probably one of his least popular, I would say, going by reviews on Amazon. And I think it's an absolute masterpiece. It's probably the second best post apocalyptic series I have ever read outside of A Canticle for Leibowitz, which is legitimate. greatest science fiction books ever written.
Mm,
So this is like a very, very high comp. His Wasteland trilogy, which is like this post-apocalyptic thing following an old man scavenging his way through the wasteland. And then the sequel book, The Savage Boy, is literally just about all of the horrible things that happen to this teenage kid. And then The Road is a River, which wraps up the stories of everybody in the
hmm.
series. And it's an unbelievable work, just absolutely brilliant. But it's also something that you could kind of tell is never going to be as popular as something like Galaxy's Edge.
Yep.
And Nick Cole, if he had wanted to go down the path of making works like, the Wasteland trilogy, very much could have done it. But he knew they would not sell as well. Galaxy's Edge sells extraordinarily.
Yep.
So that's where he went. That doesn't mean that the books are bad. I am
Oh
not
no.
saying that. I'm not even saying that they're worse than great. I'm saying that, like John C. Wright, who Vox will often call the greatest living science fiction writer, and John in his best moments can be,
Oh
Nick
yeah.
Cole also had a shot to be at that level, but decided not to take it,
And we're
if
not
that makes sense.
right, and we're not talking sales or anything like that. We're talking
No,
craft. Um, like there's multiple levels to it. You want something ideally that's popular, well crafted, and sells well. Popular and sells well are not the same thing. Then you have things like that are well crafted but don't sell well. I view a lot of the things we do right now as in that category. There's not an author on here who I say is garbage in the superversive pen, or adjacent or wandering around. Um, but you know what there is a difference. There's a huge difference. And then, like a lot of this can be judged only from people outside of it or from people who study it and decide to emulate it. I know that Nicole's two books that I think are probably as good as any master work of science fiction, Requiem for Medusa, and right now, I haven't finished it. He could trip up at the end. Gods and Legionnaires are as good as any of the masterful.
interesting. I don't know either of them, but that's kind of the point, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it's like Chronicles. Sorry, Requiem for Medusa is his like Boba Fett, sort of novel. It's part of the Tyrus
Okay.
Rex series, um, and honestly, it's the best of them. Uh, what is it? What's the name of the other one? There's Madame Guillotine and Dragon something. Chasing the Dragon. So there's it goes three right now. Requiem for Medusa, which is amazing. Probably one of my favorite books of the series, next to Attack of the Shadows and um, what's the other one? Imperator. Then we have, as well as Galactic Outlaws, which is and then we have Gods and Legionnaires. Sorry, no, I was talking about the Tyrus Rex series. Then we have Chasing the Dragon, which is just okay. Then we have Madame Guillotine, which I don't like. And I think that Madam and Chasing the Dragon has issues. It doesn't follow through on several promises of mech on mech action. Um, Not that it doesn't deliver cool scenes, but a lot of it's too personal. When in reality, Tyrus Rex should have stormed the keep, jumped into one of their samurai mechs, and had a duel on top of the battleship that they destroyed in the finale. Like
That's
it's.
pretty cool.
I mean, it would have been pretty cool if he did that, but and again, I'm not saying that the ending wasn't good. I'm just saying that it wasn't as good as it could have been.
Well,
But they might be keeping that for the next series. The Madame Guillotine goes away from Tyrus Rex. It focuses on this one chick who's like in an Antifa rally and got captured by bad agents. And I just don't care about any of it.
I'll tell you with Nick Cole, I'll tell you another reason I think that, like, what Vox was saying, that he could be a genuinely transcendent writer if he really wanted. In every book by Nick Cole I've read, the only three that I really loved, like thought were brilliant, amazing, fantastic was the Wasteland trilogy. But in every book by his that I have read, there were moments in the book that made me like put the book down and go, that was incredible.
Yep.
There's he has one book, I don't remember the name of the series at all. It's like a post-apocalyptic thing that I did in collaboration of other authors, and could look. You could probably find it just by looking that concept up on Google. But anyway, and the first book was like a zombie attack and a small group of survivors band together, and it's fairly typical of that genre, but it's good enough. It was just good enough for me to read the sequel, which was called, I think, The Dark, if I'm not mistaken, and it was about a slow kid. In this midst of the zombie apocalypse, there's this slow kid whose father is killed, probably. We learn pretty quickly that we at least have an idea that his father is dead, even if the kid can't grasp it. And he ends up on his own. And the book itself, it's well written. Uh,
Hmm.
it's interesting what happens. And eventually, though, the kid ends up at a library, and like the military, I believe it was guarding this library, and it's like one of the last bastions of human knowledge, and they sort of just look after the kid there. And there's this moment at the end of the book where, like, this book that was pretty good and not great, that it was good enough for me to keep reading. And the military guy realizes that people are coming for the library. The kid is there, and to save the library, he'll have to leave the kid to die. And he has to make this choice. So he's standing there and he realizes, like, I could either save the last bastion of humanity's knowledge right now, keep it safe from, post apocalyptic, whatever it was, again,
Hmm.
or I could just send the slow kid out of here and hope that he makes it. And he says in the book that the guy realizes that there's something fundamentally inhuman about choosing the library. That saving that knowledge but leaving the kid to die is losing more than losing all of the knowledge of humanity. It is a bigger loss. And he sends off the kid, and the kid is brought in by the characters from the previous book. And he realizes he finally grasps that his father is dead. And that's how the book ends. And it was that moment, and I get this in every Nick Cole book I read. There's always at least one moment like that was just a little bit above, a little bit transcendent, something that you won't see from almost any other author. The only other guy who could do that consistently is probably John C. Wright.
Yep.
And even him, Nick Cole, in the sense, because John C. Wright likes to go all out with his ideas, it's rare that he has the sort of polish and focus that Nick Cole has. So those
Hmm.
moments, in a sense, don't get lost as easily as they sometimes do with John, and
Yep.
sometimes not. John has amazing stuff, that I would rank up there higher than Cole's. Just talking as a whole.
Yeah. Like there's a manga called Pluto that's pretty good. It like takes some arc from um uh what is it from Adam, uh what's his name, Adam Boy, what's the name of that one kid with the two spikes for hair, Japanese robot boy turned into a robot.
Oh, Astro Boy.
Astro Boy, thank you. And in this arc, he's not the main focus. Instead, it's the other world's strongest robots. And there's these
Is this
scene,
Osamu Tezuka?
yeah, sort of. It's what are those guys who always imitate him? Just a second.
That I know.
There we
I
go.
just knew Astro Boy was Tezuka.
Right, Tezuka was it's there's Naoki Urasawa and Osamu Tezuka, and they often work together, along with Takashi Nagasaki. Um, and it's a lot of the guys Urasawa's work. If it's not excuse me, if it's not something sort of psychological, it's often ripping off someone else's stuff with their permission and doing it better sometimes. But there's a scene really early on that's just absolutely transcendent. Um, the the super battle robot basically takes a job as a butler to sort of make him more connected with human life and human living and all that jazz. And so he's so he's doing it, and the guy's like, "I hate robots," blah blah blah. And of course, they grow to be friends and stuff like that. And it turns out, he took the job to be this guy's butler because he wanted to learn how to play the piano because the guy was a great composer. And he did he did the soundtrack to Moon as a Harsh Mistress, apparently. Not that that's a real movie in our world. Um, and so there's this scene where like it goes through and you're seeing life and you get real connected to the characters, where he just looks up and like you see sort of storm clouds on the horizon and you know already that this is bad, that there's some sort of bad connection. So he's like, I gotta go, I'll be back in a bit. um, And he's like, "Oh, where are you going?" And he just rips off his cloak. Now his care, the guy he's caring for is blind, is a bat, so he can't really see it. But he reveals that he's just covered in weapon systems, and he blasts off. So the fight, which he knows is coming to him whether he likes it or not, is away from the man's villa. And even though it's not really an ideal situation for him, he can fight it away. And of course he loses because we're still in the ramp up period of the story, but it's a very transcendental um, scene because he goes out humming, like he's basically found his soul, so to say. Um, and later on, through different like backstories and stuff like that, you discover that that he basically held the top kill count, et cetera, et cetera. Later descriptions describe more of him than what you get at first, and it's just a fantastic scene that's in my memory. But that's more of a manga thing. What's weird is that the ending's kind of forgettable, which is such a pity.
Yeah, that is too bad because that's I was actually thinking of Miyazaki, thinking of Nicole, because he has a book too that reminds me in a very specific way of Princess Mononoke called The Savage Boy, which is the middle book of his Wasteland trilogy.
Mm,
And The Savage Boy is the sort of book that the superversives, that if you just describe the plot separate from actually reading it, it's the sort of books that the superversive would say that they hated, if that makes sense.
yeah.
It's about this kid, a teenage boy, and his mentor has just died. And this is post apocalypse, nuclear wasteland. The government's gone. You know, the society has regressed back to like the Old West. People scavenge from cities. The whole deal. We're that far gone, right?
Mm-hmm.
And his mentor was apparently a member of the U.S. Army, and he had just recently died. And his mentor's job was apparently to go out to the west, and then report back to Washington D.C. and tell him the state of that half of the country. But he was never able to make it back. So he gives the task to make it back to Washington D.C. with the report to the boy, who is never given a name. He's only as the boy. And the boy has to go on this long trek. It's like the trek is almost certainly pointless because how Washington D.C. is almost assured completely destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever we would think of as America is almost certainly completely non-existent now. But that was the man's mission. He wasn't able, and he has a responsibility to complete it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the boy is given this task to go across country to resolve this totally pointless mission, and I'm gonna spoil the story to make my point, but I don't think it really is the power of it, so I don't much. And of course he goes, and Washington D.C. is indeed a nuclear wasteland, and America is gone. So he goes through incredible struggles and hardship for nothing. Yeah, there's nothing there. So he makes his way back to the West Coast then. Is joins in with a group of people, is then betrayed by them. He's
Mm-hmm.
doing all of this stuff, and he ends up on the West Coast and falls in with a basically, like, I guess, a village of Chinamen because China had invaded the West Coast of the United States before the bombs dropped, and now they were like a colony living there. And he joins in with them, and they take him in. He falls in love with a girl from the village, but he knows that they won't be allowed to marry each other because he's a white guy. So him and her run off, and they're chased by the people of the village, including the father of the girl, who is the one who had taken him. He is now trying to kill him as well. And the book ends with the wife being killed, the boy's horse being killed, who is like his one companion throughout the story, and the boy eventually just wanders out alone in the desert to die. And when you just hear that book described, it sort of sounds like something, say, of Mice and Men, a Steinbeck,
What's the name
right?
of the guy who
That
wrote The Road? Uh,
Yeah, Cormac McCarthy.
there we go.
It sort of sounds like that, right? The sort of story where you go, it was pointless. Why did I even read that? But when you read the book, it's nothing like that. And when
Yeah.
you reach that ending, the boy is wandering around, and this is like we're talking 5 pages before the book, and he reaches a farm, and a farmer is there and goes out to talk to him and says, "Oh, hey, why don't you come in?" And the boy asks for directions. Where's civilization? And he goes, "Well, if you go to the west far enough, you'll eventually, or to the south, I mean, eventually you'll hit a village. But if you go to the east, you just enter the wasteland. It's all desert, and you'll be dead within a day." And the boy just starts wandering into the wasteland. He completely ignores everything else the farmer is saying. And as he wanders out into the wasteland, the farmer yells, "Wait, I'll pray for you, son." And the boy collapses in the wasteland, and the book ends with the old man rescuing the boy as he's about to die of dehydration. And then it leads right into the third book of the series, The Road is a River, which ends on this triumphant note, you know, which ends the
Hmm.
whole series on a very upbeat note, even though he does die. But he's an old man, and stories like that, the old man always dies.
Yeah.
It's how those stories work.
I
But
getcha.
the Sav- the Savage Boy is a very interesting book, and it reminded me of Miyazaki in this way. This was my impression almost after Princess Mononoke. I finished the story, and this is the reason too that I know that Jaji and a lot of people prefer Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind, and I'm a big pusher of Princess Mononoke. And one of the reasons I am a big pusher of Princess Mononoke is that after finishing the movie, it occurred to me later that this movie should not have been superversive. Everything was working against that idea. The brutality of the world, the futility of their conflict, the just the whole tenor of the story seemed to be working away from this, the fact that none of the factions were really good guys or really bad guys, but that there was no real good side to latch onto here. All of it pointed towards this being sort of like a Game of Thrones style mess of shifting loyalties where the biggest appeal is shock value and arguably the complexity of the characters, which is a lot
Mm-hmm.
they like. But Princess Mononoke is a lot more than that. Miyazaki ends it on this upbeat note against all odds, and ultimately comes out with what is a decidedly superversive story. And I think that Nick Cole has that same ability to portray brutality and misery and heartache and supervert it.
Yeah.
You know, it's a really, really, and that's why I said Nick Cole had the potential to be one of the transcendental writers of the era, and he decided he was going to write stuff that he knew would sell, and I really fault him for that because the stuff that he knew would sell is assuredly selling, and it's certainly not bad.
Well, it's one of those things like he traded a little bit, just a little bit of what he could be for a lot more money, but the thing is it worked out for him. A lot of authors I see, just sort of go straight for the Space Marine shovelware, the steampunk shovelware, the romance, the porn shovelware, and it doesn't
Ryan
work out
Niemeyer
for them.
did the same thing.
Ah, yes. But it
He
also,
did the exact, in fact, he'll almost admit he did like the exact same thing that his first series, even though it got good reviews and was fairly popular,
hmm
didn't do as well as he'd like, so he switched to a next series, and that's doing great.
oh yeah, and it's like his mech series is nearly $6,000 in an Indiegogo. And he's doing all these other things, but it's also like his mech series is genuinely good, just like I assume the Old Man in the Wasteland and how um,
Well, Nick Cole's
Galaxy's
Galaxy's
Edge
Edge
is
series is
absolutely,
genuinely good.
yeah, genuinely good.
Yeah,
So it works out. Like it helps that if you're going to quote unquote sell out, which isn't really what's being done here, but if you're going to quote
yeah. To
unquote
be
do
clear,
that,
the big difference here between selling out is that they're not doing something easier. They're
yep,
certainly putting, to my knowledge anyway, I have to ask that confirm for, but I would bet a pretty penny that they are not working, they are not doing this because it is easier. They are working just as hard. They're putting as much
absolutely.
of their heart and their effort.
There's
It's just
certainly
that they're putting that effort into onto a work that statistically is more likely to be popular.
yep. And it's eventually I'll probably start doing that myself. I am sort of moving into doing more of this stuff professionally now that my life is kind of solid. Uh, and I've balanced out my emotions and all that jazz, and it's no longer just a day to day why. It's an actual life to live. Why not do
Mm-hmm.
what they're doing for myself as well. I know that Time Stopped King, Jasper Silver, and Doctor Steam Cannon, and maybe that Indiana Jones ripoff will probably sell better than Cyber Gothic and 30 Light Years or Less. But I'm going to work on those two because I really want to put my passion and heart into them. And honestly, if I can pull off Cyber Gothic, nothing's going to be outside of my ability to write well. You know what I mean?
Oh, exactly. I mean, that's an unbelievably difficult thing. Uh, on the other hand, I'm not one. Some people, like John C. Wright, has expressed to me, mentioned it uh, that this sort of meticulous attention to detail that bores me to tears, and that I to write. By the way, I actually do enjoy
Yeah,
that bores me to tears to write, and that I find very difficult incorporating into works. He absolutely loves it. So what do I know? Like
right.
he has a whole thing. I believe I made this comment. And this is again one of those things that stuck in my head after several months that almost certainly nobody remember, but just got lodged in. It was like on a count to a trillion maybe, and he put out like his star chart or something, and it was pages and pages and pages long and meticulously detailed.
Yep.
And I made some comment like, I guess novelists don't do real work, and John, facetiously.
Yeah, yeah.
And John responded, I don't see, it's funny you say that because I don't really get this comment. This was all really fun to
Yep.
I don't think of it as real work. I think of it as what's fun. And I'm thinking, like, research is something I really, really don't like doing when
Same.
it comes to writing. I would rather just get to the meat and potatoes of the story. When I was doing Tales of the Once and Future, I think that's why I find description so difficult I want to tell a cool futuristic fantasy weird western thing, but it also had to be set in something resembling Britain. And I think that my success on that was at best mixed. I need to acknowledge my own flaws. It was a first book. I made an effort, but I know what I need to improve on.
Yeah,
So,
but it
looking
wasn't.
back on that,
Yeah, but it's like we can make the whole success argument and stuff like that, but it was successful. You know, it was a good book. You did mix the stories very well with the overarching storyline, and it's you know, it's something that I do have in my library right now, along with you know, all the other stuff I enjoy, and
I go ahead.
it's you know, I hope I hit that with Tears of Elfland and Sheik of Mars and all that jazz. But it's I don't like what I find is I just don't think about it once I publish it. Um, you know, you just sort of give things up and hope it doesn't come back to bite you.
Well,
Um,
what I want to do right now, as far as whatever my next project will end up being, is I had an idea a while back about Pokemon Isekai, and that was almost semi in cheek because the idea was that Isekai sucks. So I wanted to do an Isekai that was had all of the stereotypical trappings of trash Isekai, but did not suck.
right?
So I came up with the idea like nobody ever does Isekai set in like a Pokemon world, but that's an RPG, and
Yeah. I mean, it'll sell. You know,
I
it.
kind of brain. But what I think would be really fun to do is a shonen style story, Demon Slayer, Hero Aka, Hunter,
Yeah.
Maki, all of that stuff. Since I am number one shonen trash fan, and actually that's really not true. I don't like Naruto.
Naruto.
Uh,
So like, it's a two of
yeah,
three.
or Bleach. I don't really like Bleach, Naruto, or
Really?
any of the older stuff. I like
You don't like One Piece?
one One Piece. I like. How about this? I like One Piece when it is good, which is sort of which I don't think is exactly a contradiction because the anime has so much damn filler and it's
Ah,
paced really weirdly because it needs to keep up with manga and all of that.
yeah.
But when it is hitting on the story beats that Oda wrote that are in fact very well written, then it is great. I
Uh,
have a lot. I suppose I could say more though. I'm not like the One Piece super fan like Joshi is. I suppose it's more like I have a lot of respect for One Piece. I could tell it's very well put together,
mm,
and I do whenever I dip my toe into it every time, which is rare. Every time I do, I enjoy myself, and I have great respect for what he's done, especially the world building, which is absolutely insane.
mm-hmm.
The amount of detail he's done with world building. But like I think that My Hero Academia is a legitimate fantastic story. You showed me that new YouTuber who is hysterical. Uh what's his name? Looking
Scroll up a
here.
second.
Scamboli.
Scamboli, yep.
Scamboli reviews. Who is hysterical and he's like a bargain bin ER.
Yeah,
But
basically.
he's funny.
Yeah.
Uh however, I did disagree with him. He had a whole thing on how emotional anime uh, how shonen is never be looked at as well as anime. And I was thinking to myself, that's kind of interesting because the most emotion I've ever felt watching anime with shonen.
Yeah. I mean, it's
Because,
also helps that we're guys. You know, we handle manly emotions like when Nami and Nico Robin sort of beg for help from Luffy, you know, or when you know, various characters have to deal with their flaws and deaths and backstories.
right.
You know, it hits in the
There's
right
also
way.
there's a great scene, the anime Shirobako, which is, the show about anime studio make anime. And
Mm-hmm.
it's a good show and I highly recommend it. It's a lot of fun. Anyway, I know Digibro absolutely loves Shiro.
Digibro is is sadly not quite doing what we want him to do. I want content, Digibro.
I
Content?
know he, but whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
Anyway, there's a scene in Shirobako that I related very strongly to. It was like two animators are arguing with each other, and she has to, the main character has to figure out a way to get them to pick up, and she brings them to. Again, I'm getting details wrong, so if you looked it up, you would find it slightly off. But like a poster or something of a giant robot show, like a mech show,
Yeah.
and they go, "Oh man!" And they both learn they were huge fans of this show growing up. And she goes, "Oh, so like you both like big action shows?" And they both look at her, and at the same time they go, "No, that's not why it was great. It was about integrity." But
Yeah.
and they're like really emotional about it. And I'm like, "That's me when I tell people about My Hero Academia."
Right.
When
And
they
you're
go,
not
"Oh, so
wrong.
you like, yeah, you like big superhero action shows?" No, that's not it.
Right.
It's the beautiful moment where he yells United States of Smash and punches a guy. And it's this beautiful culmination of a character arc. So I felt that really strong in Shirobaka
Right. And
that
it's
they got that right. They kind
right.
of got that right. Just the two people who were like really angry, where they're like, think it's just an action. It's not it.
Right.
You're wrong.
And it's and it's important. Like it's I don't need another romance anime or anything like that. Like there are a dime a dozen. I don't want some dark description of the inner psyches of how people really are because I was bullied as a kid. I want
Right.
things with actual heart that grow. Like who wants to get stuck, in the same mindset forever? Like all of a sudden it's like, dude, just admit that you got your ass beat and that, it hurt you and then move on and then grow bigger and greater from it. Embrace
Here's
the iron.
another good example. You talk about like the king of the stupid man shows is Gurren. It is intentionally structured that
Yep.
way. It's a masculine fantasy story structured to be specifically that. The main character literally marries a space prince, right? I'm
Mm-hmm.
not even saying this, it's not even funny because I know that this was intentional.
But the
So,
thing is that I wouldn't laugh at it. Why would you laugh
yeah.
at, the space princess marrying the hero? Like I
So
poke
in the
fun.
final,
Mm,
oh, yeah, go, but like the final scene of the battle, which is the final battle of Gurren Lagann, is probably the single best battle scene I've ever seen, at least in a show. No, yeah, I
mm-hmm.
would say that overall. It's an unbelievable scene, mind blowing. And he gives this stirring speech at the end. The T-spirals are telling him about the wasted potential of humanity and how they'll never overcome their limitations. And he's, yelling at them, "That's your limitation. We represent the hopes of those who have come before us." And that's not a scene that is emotional in the way I want to Pancreas or Your Lion April or Anohana is emotional, but that
Mm-hmm.
is a scene that is certainly evoking very strong emotions.
Or
I
Clannad.
watched that scene, and as silly, yeah, or Clannad, I watched that scene, and as silly as it is in a lot of ways, I was inspired by that scene. It
Right.
was inspirational. I was moved. I felt, honestly, the emotions I felt watching that were very different emotions, but they were even stronger than the ones I felt watching Clanad, which felt like it was. Uh, Clanad's an interesting case, actually.
Right.
that's that's a whole other case. But
I.
the point being that
Yeah.
not all emotions are sad emotions,
No.
and I think that's maybe the problem in a scene like the United States of Smash scene like My Hero Academia. There's sadness in there, sure, but the main thrust of the scene is it's inspirational. But that's
Yep.
a legitimate emotion too. When One Punch Man, Rider stands up to the sea, I
Right?
tear up watching that, but not because it's sad, but because it's moving, it's powerful.
Exactly.
So
It's
why are those
heroic,
emotions, yeah, why are those emotions any less valid than planets?
right? And the Clannad emotion. It was designed specifically for what it was. Like it's a heartrending sort of tragedy, romance, etc. But then it's like then you have things like Gurren Lagann and My Hero Academia, One Piece, and stuff like that, and One Punch Man, and it's actually a different emotion that they're going for. They're going for the sort of masculine spirit, the things
Right,
that hit to the heart. You know, Moomin Rider stands at the top of C class not because he's too weak to be in B. He is, but because they say, listen. You can't advance until you're a better hero than Moomin Rider.
right, exactly.
Like, sure, if you can kill monsters, you're gonna advance past them even if you're a crappy character. But the idea is that you
Incidentally, the
you look.
fight with the Deep Sea King is legitimately one of all time favorite scenes. It's probably top five.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's fantastic. But what I'm saying is that like people are looking at him, and he's well known and stuff like that, and they know he can't really take it, but it doesn't matter. He's the exemplar, just like how Tatsumaki is not Tatsumaki. Fubuki is the exemplar of um B class, where it's like you have to sort of overcome your
Right,
ambitions, or Sweet Mask is the exemplar of A class. Sure, he could be like the lowest ranked S class, but in reality, you need something more than whatever Sweet Mask has to be really S class, and that's why
right.
the
Moomin
top.
Rider says it himself in the fight. Deep
Yep,
Sea is going to win the fight. Moomin Rider knows he's going to fight, but he says it to them. It's not about winning or losing. It's about me taking you on right here, right now.
yep,
The idea behind the scene. This is why, I wrote a whole thing, so I'll make it short. The this is why One Punch Man, I believe, overcomes its limitations as a parody, the way that Deadpool or Shrek even, as good a movie, because I know you're a fan,
I'm a
as good a
fan.
movie as Shrek is,
Yeah, it
which it is
is.
a good movie.
It's fantastic.
I think that One Punch Man overcomes its limitations as a parody more, especially Deadpool being a super
Deadpool.
ever could.
Yeah,
It
Deadpool
overcomes the
is
limitations of
is
a
just
parody
mockery.
because, yeah, One Punch Man asks this question very openly and very clearly. What is the point of a hero? Especially, and with the character of Saitama, they go, we have this guy, right?
Yep,
He could do anything any other hero can do, but better. If he was around, he could beat back any monster instantly. He doesn't even need to put effort in. He doesn't enjoy it. He saves everybody immediately. So, is there even a point to heroes? Is there even such a thing as heroes? Apparently, all of these heroes are kind of frauds, right?
yep.
Maybe not intentionally, but these
Compared to
people who
him.
act like they're so, yeah, who act like they're so powerful and when they're really nothing. So, I believe that the Moomin Rider fight is essentially the encapsulation of all of these themes. It's really putting the question in stark contrast with a character like Moomin Rider, who is the least powerful main character, you know, major
Hmm.
cast member in the story. So it tells you that there's value both in a character like Moomin Rider. Rider is never going to beat down those monsters in one punch, like Saitama can. But Moomin Rider, nevertheless, despite this, has value. He inspires hope. He brings, he shows people that there's a better way. He makes them not give up on fighting, even when things are at their lowest. There is an
Yep.
inherent value to that. And Saitama, too, shows up and beats the monster in one punch. But so is Saitama really a hero? That's the second question. Saitama has no stakes, there's no risks. Can you call him a hero when he's not putting anything on the line? when he would admit as much. He would say himself he's not putting anything on the line.
He's just
But
a
then
hero for fun.
Saitama, right, but then Saitama makes a sacrifice. He sacrifices his own reputation, which he wanted. He very clearly is trying to move up the ranks in the hero class. So even though it's not something that he obsesses over or anything, would like some recognition. He is a being. And
Hmm.
he sacrifices his reputation and sacrifices the one thing that he's really the only goal he could possibly work for as a hero in order to, again, inspire hope in people and to make sure that the other heroes' contributions aren't lost just because a guy like him happens to exist. Because Saitama is also a true hero.
Yep.
And I think that's ultimate message of One Punch Man, that heroes are real, heroes exist, they are important, and even in a world where and they're not fakes, they're not mockeries, they're really out. And that's why I think One Punch Man goes, it exceeds its premise. It could have been something that could have just been amusing, funny, and well animated, and it ended up becoming a lot more.
Yep.
And that's good to loop it all around back to the original point. What I'm really objecting to is this idea that making you feel emotions is used as a shorthand for making you feel girly emotions.
Yeah.
And not even in an insulting way. I mean, as much as people like to make fun of it, feminine emotions are a thing that men need to feel sometimes, just like women sometimes feel inspired in ways.
Hmm.
Feeling sadness and whatever, using shorthand as a girly emotion. But I don't think that manly emotions should be looked at as inferior to feeling a girly one. This is
That's
where
right.
the shonen comes in. A well written shonen makes you feel those emotions, and I don't think that's any less valuable than feeling sad. You know,
Yeah. And it's like there's more to just like sort of like we said earlier, there's more to just feeling than feeling sad. Like there's the whole host of emotional things like happiness and elation and joy and stuff like that, but it's harder to feel these things through the medium of something else. I can't feel as happy about things as other people do about their stuff. Like some people can, they have that gift to be truly happy for other people, but I can just be sort of satisfied that they've succeeded. But things like inspiration, heroism, sacrifice, sadness and anger and all that jazz, you can really do more with it because those are easier to transfer to the other people. He killed his mentor, so he's angry. He's threatening these people, so, he's despicable, you hate him. And then it's like, well, he's standing up against all odds. It's like, wow, this is a true guy. You know what I mean? It goes on and on. And honestly, the best part about, some books, like especially a Nicole book, is that he can really transfer those feelings into you. Um, John C. Wright. John C. Wright hit it out of the park with Swan Knight's Son. Um,
yes.
the first trilogy, anyway. Uh, Ty, Daughter of Danger doesn't really hit it out of the park like Swan Knight's Son did, except
No,
whenever
I
Gil
think,
shows up, which is
yeah.
10, 10
I
out
think
of 10.
Daughter of Danger, that whole series, forget what that
I'm looking
trilogy
at
is,
it.
but yeah, it's
Uh,
pretty good.
yeah.
It's
Let's,
pretty good. It's not great. I'm, I wouldn't
Winged
read it
Vengeance's
unless I were,
sidekick or something.
yes, I wouldn't reread it unless I was doing a reread of the series as a whole, but I would
Yeah.
definitely read Swan Knight. And his best book is Awake in the Nightland, which is technically
Mm-hmm.
an anthology of short stories, but they connect so well together thematically. I honestly believe you'd be doing a disservice if you read them as a whole and in chronological order.
Yep.
If you
It's
read them out of order or not together like that, I think you would be doing yourself a disservice. It's a
yep.
very big difference to how the story should be understood.
I I sort of deviate from you. I think that the second and third ones needed a lot more work than what they got, especially the second one, which has a lot of meat to it that could have just fat to it, that could have just been, kicked down a few notches. Um, really,
I
with
thought
it.
the ending. Yeah, I thought that. Look, I don't think every story in it was perfect. I think that two and three were definitely the weakest of the bunch, especially story. Though
My
both were quite excellent.
Oh, they were. I actually have like 2 hours plus worth of videos of me talking about like all four of the stories. Not that every video is 2 hours plus, but just the whole
Yeah.
runtime is like 2 hours. I might just merge them all together and throw them on the Superversive Press YouTube channel sometime. But a lot of it, like thinking about my complaints about the third one especially, a lot of it is what engenders the emotions. Um, you know, a son going out to find his father in the wasteland doesn't really engender the same sort of emotions in me as it does other people. And I mentioned that in the video that there's, damage there that probably has like burnt out those emotional receptors of mine. Um,
Well,
but then it's
I
like,
will
but
say
other
this:
things would affect me as well.
I have a very good relationship with my entire family, and I still
Yeah.
one of reasons.
Well, it's
With that
also.
said, the reason I said that, I'm not saying that the entire work is equally brilliant. I am saying that to not read it as a unified whole where each story contributes to a larger thematic narrative, you will lose something by the time you finish The Last of All Sons.
Yep. And each, like, it's interesting, each of the characters have different sort of emotional tempos to them, that transfers into their speech and interactions with others and how they threaten each other, that sort of thing, from the brash hero king to Abraxander of the Threshold, who's far more thoughtful and in control of himself. um
Right. In the ending of Awaken the there are always moments in the book, and Nick Cole, I was thinking of this when too, that
mhm
in particularly great works, they have what I call, and I mean great works, like among the best, they have a wow,
mhm
a moment where after I read it, I kind of pause for a moment and I just go like, I'm almost speechless. I'm lost for words. Awaken the Night had that moment at the end of the story when he's walking out and they finally tell you about, he's walking back to the last redoubt with
mhm
his friend on his back. And then John reveals the full mural about, only one set of footprints leading into the last redoubt. That was my wow moment. I read
yeah.
that story. Like, it was such, it's sort of like it was a perfectly written, perfectly executed moment of fiction that I had nothing I could even think about it that would make it, expand upon it, that is more powerful than. Tolkien has the same thing at the Battle of Pelennor Fields, by the way. That was my wow moment with Tolkien,
Mhm.
Riders of Rohan. When the Riders of Rohan show up at the Battle of Pelennor Fields, and
Oh
that's
yeah.
my wow moment in The Lord of the Rings, where you read that moment and nothing I could say about it will ever tell you more or expand upon it more than actually. I can add no insight. You just, if you read it, it will tell you everything that you. And
Yep.
John does it twice in my. He does it once in Awaken the Night, the ending of that story, and he does it once in The Last of All Sons, and that's the final line of Last of All Sons.
Yep.
Is
Really.
such a brilliant, beautiful capper to the entire Nightland saga. And not only is it such a brilliant capper, encapsulated in such a short sentence, I have nothing I could add to it. I can't elaborate on it. If you read it, you'll just know.
For me, it was slightly different. Like the ending of Awaken the Nightland. For me, the scene that sort of made me, gasp my breath in horror, is the scene with where he's like describing how he sent his love into the Nightland, where she's wearing armor too big for herself, but she's still going for it. and then he gets captured and the disasters happen, so on and so forth. Um, but in The Last of All Suns, for me, it's them staring down into the last black hole. The black hole that's absorbing all matter into it at time dilated speeds. Um, all in all, though, The Nightland has always made an incredible impression on me. There's probably few novels that have affected me more than William Hope Hodgson's series and the books that are connected to it. For better or worse, I don't take his romance writing tips. That's for sure. But that's just me being funny. But it's
I know John wrote a very detailed defense of it.
Yeah, I know.
Reading
I don't take the tips because like I'm pretty sure that's how
because
he
it
interacted
actually
with his
sucks.
wife.
What? Yes, it
Hmm?
sucks. Did I? It sucks.
No.
It's awful.
I'm pretty sure that's how he interacted with his wife. Not even joking. Like with
Oh,
the whole
sure.
like feet and
Honestly,
stuff
why
like that.
not?
It's like, okay, I can see that. Like, because we have a whole body of his literature and poetry. And, like, whenever he writes to his wife, it's like the sappiest stuff ever. And she seemed to, like, eat it up whenever she wrote back to him. So it's like, I'm assuming that that's actually how they interacted with each other. But
That's
it's,
hilarious.
like, you know, different strokes for different folks. Um, but it still doesn't make the book or the series or anything like that in any way sort of less than the horror that it is, the cosmic horror foundation, really. um let's see, books that made me sort of stop for a minute. Let's see.
Honestly, those might be the only. Well, no, Nicole. Nicole had a couple. I mentioned it earlier, although
Well, in
interestingly, the one I mentioned about the slow kid, the dark,
yeah,
uh, that was actually in a book that was not as overall great. So that's kind of a Nicole,
right,
but that was kind of my point with Nicole, isn't it? It's that Nicole was capable of that,
yeah. Well,
but he just didn't go for it.
yeah, for me, one of the big ones for like from a John C. Wright book is and I think it's the Vindication of Man, where Rania or false Rania comes down from the sky floating on fire after slingshotting her absolutely massive not world ship, sailing ship, slingshotting it around planets and the sun, and she, falls down into a sea of wine that the fifth men have prepared for him to celebrate their wedding. That's an amazing scene that just made me go, ah. There's also, and even though this isn't quite the same sort of thing, um, there's also Wamu's fight with Joseph Joestar that got to me.
Yeah, under the radar, one of the best fights in
Right.
JoJo.
There's also,
Under
hmm,
always forgotten, and it's a fantastic fight.
oh yeah, it's like, why is Joseph important? He just like helped him beat Dio, and he doesn't even do the final fight. It's like, no, this dude has saved the world before from like worse than Dio ever was. Uh,
Joseph is my favorite JoJo.
oh, he's fantastic. But when we're looking at, sorry, I'm just going through my immense library, and it just takes a
Yeah.
minute. With
Well, as
Blame,
far as shows, I can
yeah,
expand with shows, but as far as books go, honestly, John has a moment that is close to that at the end of Pale Realms of Shade with the angel confess at, I forget his name, Flint, the detective.
yeah,
At the end of his short story, Pale Realms, or novella, I guess, Pale Realms of Shade, where Flint the detective's ghost is inside the tomb of Jesus Christ, and I think Saint, yeah, Gabriel the archangel. is standing there booming confess at him, and that comes close to me. I actually think it's hurt a little bit by the fact that he has Flint say, sort of tell a joke in that scene. Like, he says something along the lines of, while babbling nervously, like, all right, you keep repeating yourself. And I did not think that was necessary, and it took me out of the scene very slightly. But
Yeah,
overall, that scene has stuck in my memory. Like, I remember reading it and being struck by the power of it, the power of the ending. Pale Realms of Shade
yeah,
is probably my second favorite overall John C. Wright work. If you want to expand to all media, uh, Frank Miller's Born Again, when Daredevil shows up at in the climax of Daredevil Born Again, where he shows up and saves Karen Page and she collapses in his arms, is a wonderful, wonderful moment. Wolfwood's death scene, Trigon, and United States of Smash and My Hero Academia.
yeah. There's
It's a moment every time it comes on. If that episode is on and my siblings happen, like on two nights, we happened to be there and we were chatting about it. And
yeah,
when it reached the climax of that scene, we all just kind of shut up naturally because of how good the scene is.
yep. There's a few different stories that have like amazing climaxes. And honestly, it's usually the climax that gets me because it's like the culmination, the capstone of everything they've been doing so
Oh
far.
yeah,
With like, Swan Night Sun is just throughout the entire thing. JoJo, I didn't even describe really the final battle between, the Pillarmen and Joseph Joestar. But in Blame, there's a scene where now Sutomu
that's the
Nihe's
cyberpunk, right?
yeah, yeah, super cyberpunk, ultimate
Yeah, I
cyberpunk.
remember it. Yes,
It's basically what like it's Blame is one of those books I wish I could write. But
I know what
there's
you mean.
right there's a scene in midway through where uh they're in the Toha Heavy Industries um special containment zone, where they have a treaty with the Netsphere that's special, and it's invaded by the Silicon Life Society, who I just stole wholesale from my Silicon Soul people in Jasper Silver, and basically, I can't even remember his name. It's been a year since I've read it, but he there's Killy and the villains and Minsab and her knight. And she's been using the knight as the physical threat against Silicon Life, whereas she's been sort of the techno threat against them. Uh, and so every time he gets injured, she doesn't really have any ability to heal him, so she has to send him into this rejuvenation machine that remakes his body properly. And every time he comes out, he's lost some IQ points and stuff like that. So, there's a scene where like he's grievously injured, she puts him in and he comes out and he's struggling to remember everything, and like she's just holding him. She's not anything more than like a holographic hard light projection. But it's like this scene where it's like she doesn't really give a darn about anything else but this guy right here right now, who she depends on and has fought with for thousands and thousands of years untold. So eventually, like she and it's like it's kind of like stuck with me because it's like that in that scene, like she didn't give a damn about anything else, not her goals, not all the weird stuff that's going on, not the administration bearing down on her, just him. And it was like, and he himself has loyalty to her, so it just works out, and they bound off, and they have some amazing fight scenes later on in the arc. But that's sort of made me go, huh, I like it. There's where is it? I described to you that one scene from Pluto earlier, that I thought was absolutely amazing. Um,
Yes.
we've talked about One Punch Man. There's it's interesting but in the middle of Biomega, also by Tsutomu Nihei, like most of it, most of it's kind of trashy, but it's very good. It's very good. There's two scenes in it that are sort of like worth a darn. The first one is when, and it would have meant more if the guy had built this up better, because he has great ideas, but he doesn't know how to execute them as well as he should. Um, where like they discover the mother, like, so the artificial humans are made in a vat and they spend 100 years in the cyber world, and 1 year in the real world, sort of thing. And she's like their teacher, mentor, mother sort of character. And she's killed, and he like takes care of her body while he destroys the whole thing around her, to both kill the villains and to sort of create a funeral pyre for her. The second one is the standalone story with one of the villains. One of the villains has been like the main physical threat that the artificial humans have been fighting. And, basically, he gets thrown into space because of shenanigans I don't want to go into because it's too complex and won't make any sense. But he finally lands down on Earth, where this princess helps him out, but she gets captured and he goes in after her. And it's not so much like any of the ideas on it, because it's all like sort of tread. But once I finish reading it, and he gets taken up into space, and it's implied that the princess is pregnant, even though everyone involved is a cybernetic organism. That this had more to it than the entire rest of the series to come. And I've always been sort of like haunted by that idea. It's interesting. I'll do one more.
Yeah, the go ahead.
In Kursova, there's a short story, and there's a short story by Skylar Hernstrom, who I absolutely adore whenever I come across a rare book of his. He doesn't write very often, but it's about this night, and it's set like in a Nightlands future where like everything's so crazy and out there that you just have to believe it. Where the witch goes, well, I can't peel off your armor, and you can't, kill me, an unarmed combatant, without violating your oath. So how about we wager a kiss? If you withstand my kiss, I'll return to my dark masters. But if you can't withstand me, you have to lead me in. And he goes, okay. Because he can't think of anything else to do, because she can just kind of do whatever she wants, because he's bound by his chivalric oaths. And you know, they have the kiss, and she waits, and he doesn't succumb. He doesn't fall madly in love with her or anything like that. And she goes, "Well, you won," and hops into her chariots pulled by space cats, and sort of disappears. And then, like, as soon as she disappears, he just falls to his knees, and he's like, "Oh, I didn't win. You won." But like he just sort of collapses and dies on the battlefield, surrounded by his kin and the invading army they smashed up. And the whole, like, it's just a short story, just like 2 or 3 Kursova pages, but it's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, that's I'm trying to go. I was trying to go over in my head all those wow moments, like that sort of whoa perfect, perfect moment of fiction. And it's interesting because one of my, actually a couple, two of my all-time favorite shows, Magi, which is a shonen, and it's never on anybody's list but mine, but I think it does certain things so better than literally anything else I've seen. Its handling of complex social issues, and it has one of the most important characters, but it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't really have a moment like that. And the other show is Denu Coil, which is, again, this one, it's a little bit more mainstream. People, Denu Coil came out the same year as Gurren Lagann, and they were always competing with each other, 1 year best lists.
Mm-hmm.
It was always either one or the other at the 1 or 2 spot. But Denu Coil, again, there is no real single moment Denu Coil. However, my all-time favorite, there is a moment, Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, through all of the shows that I have watched, in that from when I first saw it, it was like the fourth anime I had ever, third or fourth, and it is still the best that I have. And I bring it up so I at one point anyway brought it up so often it annoyed people, but the episode Death of the Undying, when Mus in the fight with Lust in that episode, and there the moment in the fight where Colonel Mustang is left for dead by Lust after getting stabbed in the chest, and his lieutenant Havoc is lying on the ground in the pool of his own blood, and Lust just marches out of the room, comes upon Hawkeye and Al standing there, and she tells Hawkeye, "Oh, your precious colonel is dead." And Hawkeye just loses it on her and unloads her pistol on Lust as she just slowly walks forward. This incredible moment, and Hawkeye is lying there defeated and just tells Al here, and Al steps forward and gives this little speech. Like, I'm sick of watching people die, not when I can help it. And the moment is you hear a voice say, "Well spoken, I couldn't agree more." And Al puts up this barrier, and a wall of flame comes out and blasts Lust. And you see Colonel Mustang. And that moment, I think, when I was watching the show, it had already gotten pretty great,
Mm-hmm.
starting with when they met Greed, I think, which was a couple episodes previous. I think is when it started going from good to great. But it was that moment that I saw the show, and it was like, this is a special show to pull off a moment like this and execute it so well. Like, this is a show, not a normal show couldn't do that. But
Right.
Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood did.
And
And the other show,
mm,
go ahead.
well, it's like that's a very strong scene, but I've discovered that like I remember scenes about Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, but there's huge amounts of it that I just don't remember. And I can't recall the plot of it in the least. But then there's scenes like that which are so famous, so excellent, that just kind of reverberate through anime space time.
I
That
think
honestly
Digibro
make it
actually
work.
said something close to that. Because Digibro, I remember interestingly, he doesn't put Full Metal out on either of the Full Metal Alchemist best of lists, so he'll mention Brotherhood occasionally. However, I remember there was like a Let's Argue where where somebody said it's overrated or whatever, and I expected Digibro to agree, but he actually did not. He said, "No, actually, I wouldn't say its reputation is overrated. I think that what makes Full Metal Alchemist special is that it does just about everything well and is sometimes unbelievable." He's like, he said something like, I wrote something a while ago on how it's essentially the ultimate, that it has romance, action, like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, characters are great, the plot, it's tightly plotted, all of that. So no, actually, I would not say it was overrated. I think it's earned its reputation. And I thought that was a pretty interesting comment. But he said something similar to you at least once, where it was like, Full Metal Alchemist has portions of the story that you're not going to remember. However,
Mm-hmm.
it is peppered throughout with these moments that make you just, that will always stick with you. And also, it has one of the all time endings, for the record. The
Oh yeah,
ending helps with that.
it's pretty good.
Besides that,
I
the other show that has moments that I think is not as good of a show is, but it does have moments like this, and that's Hunter x Hunter.
yeah.
And I'm rewatching it because my brother wanted to watch it, so we're on the Ant arc again, and
Mm-hmm.
several things struck me about it. First, that it was a little bit better than I remember watching it, though I still don't think it's better than Full Metal, but it is a little bit better on a rewatch. But
Yeah.
the other thing that sticks out to me is the Chimera Ant arc is so unbelievably, really weird, and that's unusual. But even more than that, there are, I have to admit, even when I criticize Hunter x Hunter in the past, there are moments like the battle between Netero and Meriwam, the Chimera Ant in the arc, the chairman of the Hunter Association, and uh, the Chimera Ant King. The ending of that battle is legitimately one of, it might be the best scene I've one on one
I agree.
style.
It's
It might be the best I've ever seen, and that's not even my show. It's not my
yeah,
show, but that scene lived up to it. Was that good.
yep.
Just especially the ending of it, the direct
He's cutting in and
skull.
out. I
Can
agree.
you hear me better?
Yeah, I can hear you. You're probably a little bit too far from your mic or something. Um,
I moved it close.
okay, good, good, good. There's let's see.
Oh, and the moment when Gon it
Yeah,
out the guard of the sit. I don't know if I would say there was, but that entire well,
another very famous scene. Um,
it is. That's why Hunter x Hunter, as much as I have a bit of a love hate relationship with it, has some really bad kind of. It has some arcs that are good. When it is good, it does live up to.
yep, and it's stood the test of time, and people still look out for whenever the guy puts out like one volume and then goes back to having health issues. Um, it's like
I
some
think
like
it's legitimate, Gashi, because I've read some stuff
I don't know,
recently.
like it's like Achiro Oda literally works himself half to death, but then it's like this
Well,
guy, like
Ochiro Oda is a madman.
yeah, he is. He's fantastic. Um, I was actually listening. I don't know if you guys ever listen to like Alpha Investments. It's a fantastic show about Magic the Gathering and shops and stuff like that. And he has a thing where he's like, there's 20 hours in a day. What are you doing? Are you doing this? Are you doing anything of value? What are you filling your time with? What do you mean you just sit there and eat some food that you can't really afford and you're complaining about how much money you're losing, and it's like you're doing it to yourself. Like, I got no pity for you. And it's like, yeah, yeah, that's fair. And it's like that's partially like it's like, yeah, like, you're right. You're right. I need to do more. And of course I do more. But it's still like one of those things where it's like I hear that part of the reason why the Berserk guy doesn't produce as much is because he works on idle games and like is obsessed with a genre of idle game, and it's like,
That's hilarious.
bro, why? Wow.
Hey man, whatever, whatever works.
Yeah,
No, but for I've read a little bit on Tagashi, and first off, he used to have a very bad. I think it,
he has a
wherever
bad
he
what
published, very bad relation.
relationship with
Uh,
his publisher?
yeah, I
Okay.
think it was Jump. I remember like it was an interview. I think after Hawk, like they asked him, "Do you have things to say about them?" And the answer was honest
You just
for publishing for the guys who have published your hit award winning uber popular manga for year year. That's something must have really wrong.
yep.
It's also, I believe he's the person who came out with why it's like the rule with that manga 4 hours of time.
Hold on, you keep cutting out, man.
They have like 4 hours to work on manga per day if they want to meet their deadline. Like that was the rule that Tagashi came up with. He did the math on it or something absurd.
Yeah.
And then you get freaks of nature like Oda and Araki, but it is admittedly kind of understandable.
Yep.
Tagashi too. But yeah, Hunter Hunter definitely has a couple of those moments. The whole Chimera Ant arc is very slowly, but does crescendo.
Yeah.
My Hero Academia so far has one. It has the United States of convinced. Season 4 will give us more because if the manga is anything to go by, uh, season 4 of My Hero Academia should be believable.
Oh, it is. The
As
manga's fantastic.
as Mirio breaks all of our hearts,
Yep.
makes us cry.
He like finds
Uh,
your aortic artery and just starts tap dancing across the various veins and whatnot. It's like, wow,
I
wow.
so love that show. I mean, it's just the lack of irony. I think that really gets me. Like, Mirio. I guess I'm spoiling, but it's really. I love
Yeah.
The Incredibles. I love it. It's one of my all-time favorites. I've written multiple things about it. But they have the famous scene with Edna, which is hilarious. The no cape scene. And it's
Mhm.
hilarious, and I love the scene. And they even bring it back later as a sort of Chekhov's gun in the finale. So I'm not so much complaining about that, but I remember Mirio has a line. I remember Horikoshi had a little thing of the chapter. He said, I was wondering to myself, why do heroes whoops? And I decided, I came up with an answer. And Mirio says in manga, paraphrased, capes are for holding little girls who are afraid. And I
Mhm.
just remember and going, I love that because it's so corny but so sincere. Like, there's no irony in that line at all. That's why you use capes.
Yep.
Use capes to hold little girls who are afraid. The Incredibles deconstructs the idea, but My Hero Academia finds the answer.
Yep.
And I think that's why I really do love it. It's the same with United States of Smash. United States of Smash is a very silly line. It undoubtedly is. What is really a very silly, he just punches a guy into oblivion, but it is played deadly serious. Yeah,
Yeah.
it is played deadly serious. Like, deadly. People are in tears who are watching it. The
Mhm.
consequences of the scene reverberate throughout the world. All Might, what it means for his character development, no one is laughing at that line. Nobody is doing anything but taking it with the utmost, gravitas of the moment that it deserves.
Yep.
And that's why I really do love My Hero Academia. It's always going to be my favorite. Uh, even if there are maybe better shows out there, and to be honest, I don't even know if there are that. Hero Academia is exceptionally well written,
Yeah.
especially in terms of especially character. My Hero Academia has unbelievable character development. The radar, the is best at is characters and character development.
Yep.
But even outside of all that, it would be hard for me not to fall in love with a show that with a scene like that.
Mhm. And it does so much for it, and it treats it so well. Personally, my favorite sort of mini arc of all time is the school festival arc with Gentle and Love Lover. Like low key, like their interaction with each other is like some of the best. Like even though it's just like two people, it's a very small arc after this arc, just to sort of balance everything out before they go into something big like My Villain Academia. Uh, you know, it
Oh yeah,
and as well as like Endeavor's rise to the first hero, which also is a fantastic arc. Um,
that's where I say that Horikoshi, under the radar, what he is best at by far is characters and character development.
yeah, It's like a lot of people don't like Endeavor, and it's legitimate. It is genuinely legitimate. Like it's you like the damage that a guy like him can do to his family
Yeah,
is absolutely immense. And if you're
look, you
it
could dislike the character, but you can't say that he's well.
exactly, he is absolutely fantastic. It's one of those things. It's like oh, and that's for another stream. But it's and I see a
Yes,
lot of my dad in that. It's like oh, but it's
and it's
also
also that. Go ahead.
like so. Here's what makes Endeavor work. Here's the only thing that makes Endeavor work. The one thing that he needed to get right, and he did. Endeavor would be willing to die if it meant, doing his job as a hero.
Yes,
And that makes his character more than just tolerable, it makes it excellent. Not that it makes
there
him
is
a
a
good
core
man, but it means that he has something more than just, being a flat evil
blind lust
character.
for power. There's more
Yep.
than blind lust for power.
Yep.
He is more than just that. I think that Endeavor really kind of under the radar. Endeavor is one of the ballsiest characters I have ever. I cannot imagine the backlash you would get in Western media to show a wife and child abuser like Endeavor have this slow transformation horror showing. It
Yep.
it would be there would be no way. You just couldn't do that. That would be a character tried about
Yep.
uses. The fact that Horikoshi is taking a topic that heavy and doing it with such finesse is unbelievably
Yeah. And it's like he
okay.
doesn't even like, and it's even better because it's like, so the damage that he's done throughout his life, isn't just swept under the rug or it's forgiven. It's like, yeah, we're all still pretty messed up, and he's like, I know you're pretty messed up. Let's get over it, guys. Dad, hold on a second. It's not that quick, It's like one of those things you
Oh,
just sort of,
Shoto Todoroki. Yeah, they're both Todoroki. Shoto Todoroki is hilarious. I believe there's a scene after Endeavor gets his eyes scarred, like
yeah,
Todoroki has. They're just sitting down and eating breakfast, and like they both know. They're just like they don't look at each other, and they're eating. And then Shoto says something like, "By the way," there you go, nice scar. Just walks away while Endeavor scowls at him.
yeah. And like, and to Endeavor's credit, he's taken it like a champ. Uh, it's
The
just
irony is not lost on,
yeah. And it's it goes on, and we could go on and on talking about this stuff, but it's
which is good
it's
because my brother just showed up, so I should.
yeah. Anyway, Anthony, it's a pleasure talking to you. I always like grabbing you every now and then just to talk to things. Uh, you know.
That was fun as always. I always like discussing it. When my
hmm
Heroes Academia 4 comes out the 12th, I would love to come back and talk about it because Bones does, honestly, the manga Hero Academia. So,
Yeah. We'll schedule something. All right, I'll let you go.